What's up there, workforce? Chris here with Work to Game, and yesterday I put out another guild guide. I've put out several for this expansion. I know we did them last expansion, and they're just when I find that some technique that's either been mentioned somewhere in the Reddit community or somewhere here on Discord, or I've just tried something and it's starting to make me money at what I feel like is an alarming rate. And I usually don't stick with it forever, or I would probably have a lot more gil, but I'll stick with it long enough to see that it is working and that it is generating what could be a lot of money if you just kept doing it. And so I put out these guides and they get a lot of feedback like, I was already doing this and you crushed my market, or this won't work now that everybody's doing it, or I did this and I made X. And there's a couple of things that I want to tackle there, just so that I make sure that we're all speaking from a level playing field. First, this game has at least 1 million active players. My guild guides get, I don't know, single-digit thousands of views usually. So the idea that I crush a market, I don't think is the case. I follow a guy named Want to Buy Gold on WoW, and he does a similar sort of thing for gold making strategies on WoW, I mean, he has like an economics background and stuff, so he's talking at a level well above what I can, but it's fascinating, and I learn a lot about economics and stuff along the way, and I really enjoy his content. And he says, like, yes, I noticeably see a market that I put a guide out on depress because he gets a lot more views and he's affecting very specifically the gold making community. But he says after about 2 weeks, it bounces back. They all try it, and then some say, it's boring. So think like Gunbreaker or Dancer getting added to the game. When the game first comes out, there's too many, but you're already starting to see Tank being the adventurer in need. You're already starting to see groups that only have one Dancer in it, or groups that don't have a Dancer in it. It wears off, the fascination, the newness. Now, there's some people who say, this is a good fit for me, and they stay there. But it doesn't do that long term. So the idea that I'm going to ruin a market just isn't the case. The second is that once I mention it, it's not worth doing. Well, that just depends on how much profit there is to be made there. And that has to do a lot with that undercutting thing. So if we have, you know, three different groups of products here, and one is listed, they're all three listed at 10,000, and one of them is being undercut by 1,000, one of them is being undercut by 100, and one's being undercut by 1 gil. When I go out to buy something, I need that thing. And if I'm willing to spend up to 10,000 on all three, because that's what the market history says they're worth, then it doesn't really matter which one. I'll buy one for 9,000, one for 9,900, and one for 9,999. And so by undercutting by 1,000, you're not increasing the rate at which I came to the market. I logged in the market board at the same time. I needed all three products, and I bought all three back to back to back. And so the person who made the most money is that last person. And by undercutting by 1,000, what ends up happening is then the guy who's selling the first product comes in and undercuts you. And maybe on the first product, they go, you know what, screw you. And they undercut by 1,000. On the second one, they say, that wasn't very nice. And they undercut by 100. And the last one, they go, fair enough. And they undercut by 1. Okay, well now I come to the market to buy more, and you guys have undercut each other twice before I got there, and so now I'm buying at 8,000, 9,800, and 9,998. Okay, and so you can see how undercutting too much drastically causes a market to just crash. If you look into the market history and it's just not selling, hasn't sold in a couple days or anything like that, then the market needs to come down. And that's a theory called like the invisible hand, right? That prices will fall and that prices will rise kind of as a natural ebb and flow. But if you're seeing that it's selling multiple listings a day, there is no reason to undercut heavily. As a matter of fact, you could probably list at the same price as the other person because theirs might sell first, but yours will also sell within that 24-hour period. So there are plenty of times that the 1 gil method is well shown on the market history. You just want to check that and see, is this trading often? If it is, the price is probably fair right where it is. As a matter of fact, if it's trading often and you're the one selling like normal quality and the high qualities are listed 100,000, the normal qualities have been going for 50, and there are no normal qualities, odds are because that's too cheap for normal quality. Odds are the normal qualities in that case for whatever it's being used for is considered good enough and people want to buy that. You could push that up to, I don't know, try 51, try 55, try 60, doesn't matter. And then see until you get high enough that you're like, oh, I'm seeing people start to buy high qualities and I'm seeing normal quality start to sit on the market board. Until they're sitting, you're not charging enough. Just keep going. And it's not ripping people off, which is actually another point I want to talk about. People say, oh, you're just teaching me how to scam people in the market. No. A scam is when I go door to door and I tell people, there's nothing else in the market like this, which is a lie, that, this is a good use of your money, which could also be a lie. It's not really my place to decide what a good use of their money is, and that you have to buy this, which you don't. I'm listing on the market board, and of their totally free will, they're saying, I have money, I want this thing. They're walking to the market board. They are setting their own price in their head. Okay, I just have a number up there and they purchase it. And if my number is outlandishly high, there are going to be plenty of people who undercut me that are willing to do it for less. It's really not a scam. It's not a scam, just like something being priced at market, at Walmart or Tom Thumb is not a scam. It's set what people are willing to spend, and it's worth whatever people are willing to spend, as long as it is what's advertised. So as long as what they buy is indeed high quality lumber, right? I listed high quality lumber, they got high quality lumber, they got exactly what they asked for, and they saw the price, they clicked on it. If there was a delivery fee because my retainer was not in the same city as them, it said, hey, really, you're paying this price because a delivery fee is being included, and they clicked okay. Boom, that is their choice, and they have money, and there are plenty of reasons that they may want to spend it. Maybe they don't want to look up where the vendor is. Maybe they don't feel like going to the vendor right now. Maybe they don't know how that works, but it's well listed to them. We definitely shouldn't have it to where like the stuff that's sold on vendors isn't listable on the market board, because that stuff drops from leaves. That stuff is oftentimes either craftable or gatherable. And so there are players who end up with it in their inventories that didn't get it off a vendor. And so you've got to give those people a way to get rid of it. And the fact that the market sets that rate sometimes above vendor price, sometimes below vendor price, which is one of the things I warned you guys about, is really just that the fact that the market is not engaged with the vendor price as much as you'd expect. Which I think is odd and definitely gives you an opportunity to lose money or make money, depending on which end of that you're on. But that's all that is. It's not a scam. It's just a market. This game is incredibly capitalistic. There aren't any restrictions or regulations. It just free flows up and down. People can lose money. Nobody's protected. If you go buy all that vendor gear and then somebody comes in and says, I'm going to list all vendor gear at 1,000 over vendor price, and I'm going to check it every morning, well, then your profit margin's gone, because you're going to have to undercut that guy, and then the market board's going to take a cut. And that person's making enough to keep doing it. They're never going to run out of money. And so they could crash that market because they chose to, and they have that right. Great. And if they feel that's providing a service to the server, then awesome, as long as they're happy with the amount of money they're making for doing it. I personally won't go around vendor to vendor to vendor and clog up my inventory and tie up all my existing gil to make a couple thousand gil, but I'll do it for a couple 100,000 gil if that's a convenience that people want. So it's just preference. And then the last point was about profit. And so I want to make sure that we're talking about the same profit when we get into that comment section. When I see people saying, I made 1 million gil, I made 10 million gil, whatever, I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same term, profit. So let's go back to having 3 categories of products. One of them is I logged in, and for some reason Square Enix sent me in Mogmail. I walked up to my little Moogle, and they said, hey, Square Enix said, you know what, I really like your videos. Here's 500,000 gil worth of items. And then a second set was I walked to a vendor and I bought 500,000 gil worth of items. And then I went out on my gather and I gathered 500,000 gil worth of items. Okay. Now I have 1.5 million gil tied up in these items. And so I go list them on 3 separate retainers: retainer A, retainer B, retainer C. Now they end up selling for 500,000 gil. So I log in. So I made 1.5 million gil, right? No. So on number 1, I made 500,000 gil profit. I had no time invested. I had no money invested. It was literally handed to me. Group B, I spent some vendor price on that. So I had no time invested, but I did have money invested. So say that those items from the vendor cost me 250,000 gil, right? Because they're all those big 20 to 40,000 gil items. Well, I really only made 250,000 gil profit, because you have to subtract out the 250 that I would have had if I had never done this in the first place, because I did have it. I gave it up. So if I had 1 million gil when I started this, now I'm sitting on 750. That sells for 500. I pull it off. Now I'm at 1.25, right? So I'm really only up that 250,000 gil on that retainer B. Now we go to retainer C, I make 500,000 gil. Well, I didn't invest any money in that. I just went out on my gather. Let's ignore like repair bills and stuff. So I go out on my gather and I gather up 500,000 gil. So I made 500,000 gil, right? So that's a great deal. That's almost as good as the imaginary scenario A. Well, no, there's also time invested. So if that took me 2 hours, well, then I'm making 250,000 gil an hour. So then all of a sudden you have to say, okay, well, that's making a retainer B look really good because retainer B only took me 5 minutes and I made 250,000 gil. So when we compare these, the two things that you have to think about are money and time. So some people will say, oh, I gather all my own materials for crafting so that when I sell my crafts, it's 100% profit. So even if I'm selling my crafts at not very much money, I'm always making money. Yes, you are. But if you end up selling your crafts at 2,000 gil and they took you 10 minutes, then you're not actually making very much gil per hour. And so you want to keep that in mind. Sometimes it makes sense to, if I have a crafting thing that I want to make and it has 3 materials in it, and one of them is selling at 10 gil on the market board, one's selling at 100 gil on the market, and the other's selling at 10,000 gil on the market, what I can do is I can go out and gather a bunch of the 10,000, more than I need. I can sell some of that off, and then I can buy material 1 and 2 because they're next to nothing, and that's somebody else's time. Assuming those all took equal time to gather, I might as well just gather the most expensive, and then I can just sell it off and then use the proceeds from that, the extra profit that I make on all the extra of that material 3 that I grabbed, and then I can go back and I can spend that on material 1 and 2, and I probably have profit left over, and then I make my crafts. And then it doesn't matter what my crafts make for because I really did make money. And so it just, when you think about these numbers, you want to think about it as a total math problem, and you want to put a value on your time, and you want to put a value on your money, which is already done for you. So you want to ideally get those both to money. How much gil per hour are you willing to do something for? If you find something really fun, like running dungeons is making you money, then your gil per hour doesn't have to be very high, right? Because if I'm making 10,000 gil an hour doing it, but I love doing it, well, cool, my gil's slowly going up and I like doing it. But if you don't like doing it, if you find it tedious, but you're willing to do it for money, that price is probably a great deal higher. And so when you're adding it all up to make sure it's worth doing again, you want to make sure that I really don't want to do this unless it's 100,000 gil an hour or whatever that price may be. So hopefully these just kind of make sense. This is kind of like a loose community feedback in that I'm not responding to any particular comment, but it's just a theme of comments I've noticed on my last several gil making videos. And I just wanted to kind of toss this out there to kind of just discuss some concepts that I see showing up in the comments section that maybe are either a little bit off in kind of how they're interpreting my guide, or maybe I disagree with them saying that like I'm crashing a market. One of the things I've been doing is after I put out these guides, I'm still invested in those markets, and I've been selling materia and buying materia well after the materia guide. Right now I actively have money invested in gear that I'm selling vendor gear right now. In these guides, I do it before the guide to verify it, and I do it after the guide because I'm just still invested and I'm still wanting to make a little more money off it. And I haven't seen the trends you guys are seeing, and I play on Sargatanas, and I know a lot of the workforce is on Sargatanas. So I'm not seeing what you guys are seeing. I'm not saying that it can't depress a market, but I am saying that people get bored. So you can go back to a gil making strategy from a year ago that was posted on my channel or any other, and odds are if it hasn't been refreshed lately, people have gotten bored of it that were in that market. They had a goal of an amount of money, or they were only willing to do it till it got boring or whatever, and it's a good strategy again. So these videos live a lot longer than how long people's interest in them is. So I don't know. Just a thought. My name's Chris with Work to Game. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Get back to making gil, and I'll see you next time. You guys ever wondered what's behind me? Let's go ahead and take a look. There's some Warhammer and gaming stuff. There's some German beer steins. There's a rainbow ball shooting out of his face unicorn, some Star Wars toys, some different architecture projects, some Work to Game mugs, one with a chocobo on it, some Jeeps, and then my face, and then the first skyscraper I worked on in my first job out of college. So, yeah.